Welcome to another episode of In Their Shoes. I'm Dil. As you know, I've been hosting this for the last 2 episodes, and we've got a third one here with Kayla.
Hello.
Welcome, Kayla. I'm so excited.
Yes.
I've known Kayla for 6+ years. We were just counting, and we were working together at Parrot Analytics. And Kayla is an industry data scientist at Parrot Analytics, and today we're going to talk data, and shows, because that's fun.
Of course.
Yeah. And so, well, really, I wanted to start with Kayla's story because it's very fascinating. I know it, but a lot of people don't know it. And we're going to, let's start with where you're from and
Sure.
how you went around the world, basically.
Oh my gosh.
To reach New Zealand and Parrot.
Well, this is quite a long story. I'm from the U.S. originally, so I grew up near Seattle, Washington. I went to college there, or university as it's called here, and studied abroad in London during my 3rd year, where I met my now husband, Mike. So because I met him there, I decided to go do my master's degree in London.
Where was that? The Imperial?
At Imperial College, London. So I did my degree in physics, quantum physics, and between university and Imperial, I actually spent 3 months at CERN as well. Yeah, that was a really cool internship to sort of see how, physicists, operate in real life.
For people that don't know what CERN is.
Of course.
Yeah, do you want to tell them? I know, I've read it a lot about it.
Of course. It's the largest particle accelerator in the world. So this is where they discovered the Higgs boson, and they're currently working on other particles and testing the theory of the Standard Model.
Okay.
But we don't have to get into that. But yeah, so I did that. I went and did my master's in London. And then I sort of wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after that. I didn't really want to go into academia, and if you do a PhD in physics, that's pretty much automatically where you end up. So I was sort of exploring other options. During this time, Mike and I got married, and we tried to get him a green card to come to the U.S. Yeah. However, that process takes like 9 months, 10 months, which is ages. So we decided while that was going on, we would come to New Zealand and do a working holiday visa, which is for a year. Yeah. You can work, you can travel. And we were like, that sounds good, a new start for both of us. We can be together. Mm-hmm. And that was decided quite quickly. So we packed up, we came to New Zealand. We didn't know anyone, but pretty quickly I ended up getting an internship at a startup called Parrot Analytics. At that time, there was probably 6 people.
6.
6 people in the company. And I was there as a data science intern. Yes. And I didn't really know exactly what data science was, but it used a lot of math and analytics and sort of, stuff that applied to my background. So I was like, I can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, 5.5 years later, I'm still at Parrot Analytics, as an industry data scientist. So during that time, definitely have grown a lot.
Yes.
And learned a ton about data science and the TV and media industry, and and have recently gotten my permanent residency in New Zealand.
Congratulations.
So, yes.
I'm so happy that New Zealand made this decision to have you and Mike both here.
No, it's been a really sort of amazing journey, and we're so happy that we've ended up here.
Yes, I'm so happy as well because you guys are one of my closest friends. Although we don't talk data on a daily basis, we have more fun conversations. But let's go back to, obviously we want to go into your journey because, like you said, obviously this is the information age. Everyone is treating data like it is gold, and there's a lot of certainty around data science, what it means, and like you said, you came in from a different background, but you did work in data science, and you still do. So, what is data science in your mind?
So, when I initially joined Parrot, I did a lot of research into data science and what I was getting myself into, and the easiest way I found to understand it is sort of the Venn diagram between mathematics, like statistics mostly, programming. You have to know some sort of programming in order to manipulate all the data, because that's a really big part of the data science workflow, and also industry knowledge. Because if you just can do math and programming and are thrown at a data set, the results you get won't be terribly meaningful unless you understand the context of the data itself. So in our case, that's the TV industry, so TV data. How do people interact with TV in all these different ways? And only then can we understand, create meaningful analysis out of this.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I do remember that it was the Venn of domain knowledge and the hacking or programming skills. And, the third is like the maths, stats, basic data skills, I would say.
Yeah.
For the hacking side or the programming side, does it matter what language you have picked up to, do it? Or
I mean, I would say it doesn't really matter. I think the biggest languages are R, which was actually developed in New Zealand.
Yes.
And Python. So I use mostly R, a little bit of Python. And those two languages are really built for data science, I would say. They make it quite easy. Once you get into more like object-oriented languages like Java and C, it's a bit more difficult to manipulate the data in the way that you need to.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the programming, is just to make it easy to do these manipulations on huge data sets. So you don't want to have to struggle with it, use the right tools.
I think, that's really interesting, because that's something people tend to want to know when they're either hiring or looking for jobs. So hopefully that was useful for people out there.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay, so now let's get into Parrot.
Yes.
Obviously, I know all, Parrot.
You know
but,
all about it.
What is Parrot Analytics? And
Sure.
I think the second part is we need to know how your role has evolved in Parrot and what you're doing now.
Yeah, that's big. That's also quite the journey.
Yes.
But Parrot Analytics is a company that measures the demand for TV shows in the most basic form of it. So how popular is this TV show in this country at this time? And to do so, we have a data set of billions, trillions, I don't know about trillions, but definitely billions of data points from various sources. So our proprietary data set is our peer-to-peer data set. So we've developed a patented way of going through the peer-to-peer networks and understanding what TV shows people are downloading and where they're downloading it. And that creates sort of the backbone of our data set. But we also supplement it with social media data, search data, research data like Wikipedia views, all of these things. And then what the data scientists at Parrot, including myself, have been doing for the past few years is how to combine all of this data into something that's meaningful. So this is, the end product of that is what we call our demand expressions. So how many expressions of demand have been generated for this TV show in this market. Okay. So it sounds simple. It's really not simple, but but that's the takeaway. And the big opportunity for us is that the TV industry and the movie industry really, the whole media industry is really not very data-driven at all in their decision-making, which is very understandable. A lot of it is very creative, but even from the business side, there's a lot of decisions being made along the lines of, I think it'll do well, based on past experiences, gut feel, but not really supported by solid data. So that's where we want to come in and say, this, there is data to support that your show is going to do well in Canada or Brazil. There's an opportunity to sell it to Canada or Brazil based on this data.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess that is the most basic question that that data set can sort of help answer, right?
Yes.
Cool.
And also, if you're buying content for, say, New Zealand, what is popular here? What do people want to watch? Because in this age, people aren't going to wait for The Mandalorian to be released on Disney Plus in their market. If it's not available, they're going to go out and pirate it or stream it, And so we capture that and say, wow, there's a lot of demand for this show. There's an opportunity here to bring the show to the market. Yeah,
and actually that was one of the very popular shows when it was released on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
That is, with the baby Yoda, just in case anyone was wondering. And so then in your role right now, like, what do you work on daily? And like, I was going to ask you, like, how do you start your day? How do you get into the mood for Parrot Analytics?
A lot of the days I start and look at industry news. This is sort of a throwback from when I was working in more of the insights side of things. So I spent a few years really focused on taking our data and creating insights out of it that we can give to clients, and that requires a lot of knowledge of like what's going on in the industry currently. So I still keep up with that to make sure I still know what's new and what's current. But currently I'm actually working on talent demand. So instead of demand for TV shows, we can also measure, using the same sort of sources, how popular a certain actor is, or a director or a writer. So this is very new, but that's really where I'm excited to be at. Is like, no one's done this before. We don't even know all the applications yet. But
so it's pioneering in the space of like creative, basically understanding creatives.
And understanding, like, with this data, we'll be able to go out and say, like, how do you cast a TV show? Like, obviously that's also quite subjective and quite creative, but can we help you like narrow down the field of who you go after, who you approach based on our data?
Okay. And that is also, so just to like simplify it, although you did a great job at simplifying. So talent could be an actor, it could be a director.
Actor, director, musicians, even people who aren't necessarily in the field but are public figures. Like maybe you need a musician to be a host on America's Got Talent or something like that.
Okay.
How do you go about and figure out who you should even approach for that?
Yeah, that's
so
interesting.
We're hoping our data will help with that as well.
Okay, great. And so that's super interesting. Obviously, there's lots of applications of the kind of data in content kind of space. And there's a lot of other players out there as well that do address different elements of Hollywood. But I guess what's cool about, the data set that you get to work on is it's very large and it's, kind of global.
It's definitely global, So we can track demand from over 100 markets. So, and that's really quite exciting because in a lot of markets that aren't, the US or the UK, there's actually quite a dearth of any sort of data. Like here you have sort of Nielsen ratings to measure how many people watch TV, but in some markets they don't even have that.
Yeah.
So they're really flying blind when it comes to data, and that's where we want to come in and say, hey, you can make better decisions, we believe, with our data set, and we want to support that.
Yeah, and that's the long-term game, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And what is right now the most interesting part of what you do?
Ooh, the most interesting part is really being able to create something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really quite exciting. It's similar to back in a few years ago when we were developing demand data for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember.
I remember. Yeah, because you defined it.
Yeah.
And we had that piece of paper where you wrote down the definition of this new metric that was going to be new to the world, and I framed it up because I was like,
it's still in the
still
office.
There?
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because I was like, this is something we need to keep, for memories. But
yeah. So it's easier this time around for sure because we sort of have a framework of how to think about all this data. But yeah, it's still really exciting, and we're releasing new products, all this new stuff. So it's an exciting time.
Wow, that's a lot. Lots going on. But then what are some of the challenges in what you do,
So the challenges really are, some of it's around just the volume of data that we get, and how do you ensure that it's accurate? How do you ensure that what the numbers that you're generating based on this data are, they always have to pass the sniff test. You can't say that a really obscure TV show is more popular than something really popular like Game of Thrones, because that will raise a lot of questions. So you have to do a lot of, checking and making sure that the data is sound. And then, just that's the big thing is really, data verification and being confident in what we're getting, and then also being confident in the numbers that we're generating and the algorithm to make sure that is all running smoothly.
Yes, that's good.
Yes.
Well, one thing that, I guess there were some questions that sort of came out, but before we got some questions that came out of social media, but before we get into that, I sort of wanted to know, how do you see, now that you have worked across Parrot's growth, how do you see a really good, efficient data science team forming? What are the elements of a highly productive data science team that is then, feeding into a product?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, but I think the team we have now is quite strong, I think. And the reason for that is that every person has sort of their own areas of responsibility and their own projects that they're working on, but it's very collaborative as well. We all know what each other is working on, and we can talk to each other to bounce ideas around and, ask questions. And that sort of collaboration is really how you get the best result, because it's already been, vetted by a few other people, and you're not just working in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So that's been really nice to have that sort of support, and that's certainly my experience.
Basically,
the data science team,
conversing with each other and sharing and bouncing ideas. And I also like that everyone, I guess, in the data science team has different backgrounds, but they have come together in a complementary way.
Yes.
Which for me, it's that's where magical stuff can happen.
Yeah,
some really cool ideas. Okay, so that's really cool. And I think that also leads into some of the questions we got on social media. So I'm going to pull it up. So we did ask, we were questions for Kayla, please DM me. All right, so we'll start with the one hard one, maybe not so hard one, but related to team dynamics. But so a question to ask Kayla, since she's an original of Parrot Analytics. From her experience, how should tech startups handle the dynamic decisions that, change with business direction. So I guess this person means that, if you pivot, what does it mean for you? And how do you handle it as a data science team and a data scientist? And because there is always a high risk around tech debt, as which follows that change in decision. So it will be really interesting to see that from Kayla's point of view through her journey.
Yeah, it's hard to say what the best strategy is. It really depends on the team itself and what exactly you're doing, like the specifics of the whole situation. But definitely being really flexible is very important in a startup, as we've learned. And I think the best way to have that sort of mindset is just to keep coming up with new ideas. And even if they're sort of on the back burner, especially as like the data science team who's really on the forefront of what the company is producing, like when a product is announced, like we're the first ones who has to develop that, and then the platform team has to support that, and the product team has to build that. But we're the first the first line there, I think that's really exciting, of course, and it means that we get to come up with lots of ideas. And even if they're, talent demand has been kicking around as an idea for years, but now is the right time to do it, and that's the really exciting thing.
Yeah, it's the timing of it all and the industry movement,
exactly,
right?
Yeah,
So
the industry is more ready for it now. So it can be challenging, though, for sure, to deal with all of this change. But I think embracing new things as a challenge rather than as a burden or something insurmountable, just having the right approach and attitude towards it goes a long way.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I agree. So the other questions, like on the industry side, I've got actually. So how? I think they want to ask a commentary from you on how Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, the FANG, each of them have their own media production shows and streaming services, and they're trying their best to deliver the best shows based on subscriber preference, taste, AI, machine learning, big data, analytics, psychology, behavioral science, etc. But yeah, like how do you think that they're sort of doing in that area? How much do we even know?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, a lot of that is quite, undercover. Netflix has been fairly open about its processes in the past around its data. And one of the things that's quite interesting about them is that they don't care necessarily about demographics. They care about very specific taste clusters. Where it's like, this is a very small set of people, but we know that they're going to watch this show, they're going to watch this show, they're going to watch this show. And based on that, we can make decisions based, what shows to produce that will reach this many people.
What's a taste cluster, is it?
Oh, so it's just a group of people who share similar tastes in TV shows or movies.
Could it be like female-led comedy type?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think even that would be quite broad.
All right.
Like, those very specific, labels that they had on Netflix for a while, like oddball TV shows featuring a quirky female character or something like that. Yeah, so that's sort of like a taste cluster of people who are into that sort of thing and who will watch that sort of thing. And
you're mapping them, basically.
Well, Netflix certainly is, yeah. So they're doing that, but it's still very driven by sort of the old school industry stuff. Like those companies have hired, people who are already in the media industry to support these new endeavors. And Netflix came out recently and said, data only really drives about 20% of their decision making, and 80% of it is still that, very intuitive gut feel thing that's been the industry standard for forever.
Forever, yeah.
So there's definitely, and in addition, they all have their own data sets, but it's not necessarily as targeted to TV as for example, ours is. So they might have a partial understanding of what their audience watches, but there's still opportunities for us to, provide the bigger picture in the market to say this is sort of the overall trends.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads to the second question that we are asked. How is Hollywood coping with this competition? For example, Netflix being one of the largest bandwidth users of internet traffic, around 20% roughly, and 170 million subscribers. Basically, Parrot Analytics being the industry leader. Would be interesting to hear your thoughts on the competition in content right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's really heating up. There's more players than ever before, and with Disney Plus and Apple TV coming out, it's really interesting to see that, we're still in a period where there's going to be more and more and more and more. Those Disney Plus and Apple are finding their own sort of niches, and they're not small either. They're not just crushed by Netflix. There's still a lot of opportunities out there, but I think Hollywood is still trying to figure out what's the best way to make sure that they can have that piece of the pie, right?
Yeah.
Rather than tech companies, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just a very exciting time, and there's a lot of changes happening in how these companies do business and how they choose to release their shows and produce their shows, and it's really interesting.
So it's going to be evolving.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, now it looks like we've got a couple of more personal questions. So one, maybe quickly, what did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Oh my. So when I was really little, I wanted to be a paleontologist because I love dinosaurs. Yeah, so
Totally.
Yeah. And I had a teacher in second grade who was like, "Oh, Kayla's definitely going to be a scientist of some sort."
Yeah.
So it took me a while to figure out what type of scientist. And for a long time, physics was it, but.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then what advice would you give your 16-year-old self as she was navigating her choices in life?
Man, so at 16,
yeah, were you in Seattle?
So I was in high school.
Okay, yeah.
It's really hard to say what I would do too differently. Obviously I'm really happy with how things have gone.
Yeah.
So I would say, just be more confident in your choices, I guess, and know that, things are going to turn out fine. No matter what you choose, you're on the right path. And it's never too late to change what you're doing as well. I thought I would be a physicist for, 5 years, but now I'm a data scientist. And, and that's great.
Exactly. And careers are very zigzag nowadays, which is cool.
Absolutely.
Ooh, another cool one. What is your definition of success? Now, I guess. Now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of a hard one, but it's not something, it's hard to say success is something you achieve. You never, at least up to this point in my life, I have never been yep, I've succeeded, that's done. It's always how can I improve and be better and, take this one step further. And that's sort of the attitude I think that people need to be successful.
Yeah.
Is really, always having this growth mindset of, there's always more to learn about everything.
Oh, yeah.
So
never stops.
never stops.
What about in life?
Oh, man.
Yeah. Because I guess that did apply also to life, but,
Well, a little bit, yeah. Really being happy with where you're at now is, if you can do that, then a lot of good things will come from that, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And... yeah.
Yeah.
It's what is the meaning of life?
I know.
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. I mean, I'm just trying to see if there were any other missed questions, but I think, we kind of covered it all. We could probably continue talking, I feel, but we are coming to the end of the show. But it's been obviously amazing knowing you and Mike.
Likewise.
Husband.
Yeah.
And I'm excited that you're going to stay here forever.
Well, you never know. But for a
shattering my hopes, but yeah,
for a while.
For a while, and I know the team really loves you, and I know that they're hopefully listening, and some of them have their birthdays today. So happy birthday, Joanne!
Yeah.
And secondly, this conversation doesn't end here because there's so much more we could probably talk about. Like we wanted to talk about the gender data gap, but that I do know that you are going to be speaking at the Women in Data Science conference in Auckland, so that's on March 21st.
March 21st, on a panel at, I believe, 11 a.m.
Awesome. And so if anyone wants to attend that, you can DM me and I can send you the link to that event. But it's happening at the University of Auckland. That's a really fun one. I will be there.
All right. I'm excited for it too.
I know. We can talk more and we can hear more from you. And I guess, is there any sort of like advice that you would give to people who want to enter data science, especially here in New Zealand?
Especially I don't know about specifically New Zealand, but definitely having a sort of analytics math background is very helpful. Having some programming experience is really, really key as well. Yeah. And I think the best advice is just to go out and do it. And, there's plenty of resources online for learning data science and doing, actual applied projects and competitions and stuff like that. So if you're interested in it, definitely just give it a try and see how it goes. There's a lot to learn, and everyone is sort of learning. Because this field is so new, everyone's sort of learning the best practices. So it's a good opportunity to get into it.
I wish I could have done it. Although you never say never. Yeah. I could still learn and do it. But yeah, if people wanted to know more about Kayla, you can find her on LinkedIn. Yes. And just ask her questions. I know she loves to share her experience and learn from everyone else out there. But thank you, Kayla.
Yeah.
I love you, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And we're gonna have an amazing day today.
Yes,
even though it's raining, but
that's
okay.
good. Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks, Switch.
Thank you.